for coming to the 30. Senator Bach, if you would come up, and U.S. Senator Tina Smith, and Representative Eklund, if you'd come up, and whoever else you want to bring with you. First of all, we have our U.S. Senator here, and she's on time. So let's give our U.S. Senator a big hand. I am Joe Boyle, and it's my honor to be the chair of the Kuching County DFL. And it's very great to have Senator Tina Smith and our State Senate Minority Leader Tom Bach here, and Representative Eklund. So let's give them a hand. Now, it's my honor to introduce Marguerite Koschik. She's always been here for the last 20 years singing God Bless America. As we all know, Marguerite is quite experienced. In October, she'll have her 100th birthday, and she can certainly sing better than any Boyle, even anybody from Scotland. So let's have Marguerite sing God Bless America.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, wide and firm. God bless America, my home, sweet home. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, wide and firm. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet
Now we have an invocation from Reverend Sue Hamley. And Reverend, would you please come forward?
Let us pray. In our fractured and troubled country and world, we pray, O God, that we might work together for peace and justice for all your people. We pray that we can come together to support what is good for everyone, not just for some, and that in all we do, you will help us to remember to love all our neighbors, all of them, as you have loved us. And so tonight, we give you thanks for this gathering and for the food before us, the friends beside us, the love between us, and your presence among us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Introduce our state representative, Rob Eklund, a man who is a Marine, a family man, a union leader, a county commissioner, someone who really understands and listens to us. And the key thing is that he treats everyone with respect. And that's something that we don't have too much going on in the nation right now, but it's something we all have to get back to. So I now give you our state representative, Rob Eklund.
Thanks, Joe. And 37 years, that's something. 37th Fish Fry. And I know everyone I've been to has had crowds just like this, so it's amazing. First off, the cooks, or the people in the kitchen, thank you. We couldn't do it without you. And most of you know Dave Peterson is my treasurer, and he's also our fish cooker. And he said, Rob, you're the only guy that we would do this for. And it's a pretty nice night for fishing out there right now. And if you know Dave Peterson, he doesn't miss too many nights on the lake. So thanks to the cooks for the guys doing the fish. And usually I wing it, but tonight I got a little bit more of a canned speech because I want to make sure I hit quite a few things. So anyway, thank you very much for coming together to support Cushing County DFL. You know, we couldn't do it without you. You're the folks that write us the checks. You're the folks that pound in the rebar, help get the signs out. You're the ones that we count on, Senator Bach, Senator Smith, myself, to get these campaigns won. So you guys deserve a great big round of applause, and thank you for that. Because of your work that we have a DFL majority in the House, and we took off and had a good time. I found out that working in the majority is a whole lot more fun than working in the minority. And I had 3 years of working in the minority, and I get down there and all of a sudden I'm chairing a committee. Holy mackerel, what happened here? But we went to work and we got a lot done. We started the session with Minnesota having high expectations. You know, last November you gave us that majority and we appreciate it. It took a lot of heavy lifting, compromise, yeah, a little bit of overtime. We did do a small special session. But I'm proud to say that our speaker, Melissa Hartman, led the way, and my House DFL colleagues and I were able to get the job done in St. Paul, enacting a 2-year budget with investments in what we value most as Minnesotans. And then you talk about school. Before we know it, we're going to be back in school. Kids are going back. My wife Joan is and her colleague Jane are getting their classrooms ready, and every child in the state deserves a world-class education, and we enacted funding this year that's going to help ensure that our K-12 education is well funded for the next 2 years. We still have significant needs to make, but we provided more funding for some mental health training stuff and things like that we need, but we got a lot more to do, but we did a good job for our schools this year, I believe. This year we went out and tried to help with some health care coverage. Health care is at stake for 1.2 million Minnesotans, and we were able to secure the provider tax. And there's not a sunset on it. We had to give in a little bit. We went from 2% to 1.8%. But we heard how important that provider tax is to our rural hospitals and other things, and I think it was a good thing that we got it done, and it's going to be good for especially rural Minnesota. And then for the first time in quite a few years, we were able to make some substantial boosts to local government aid and county program aid. So hopefully our counties and cities will be able not have to increase levies and that sort of thing to get by, and then we'll also be able to get some of the projects done that need to be done in the state. For the city of International Falls, we got the local option sales tax passed, so they'll be able to do some more work on their plan is to work on city streets and sewers. So that was a good bill that Senator Bach and I were able to get through into the tax committee. We got some problems ahead, though. You know, Donald Trump and his Republican allies cut taxes for the very wealthiest in 2017. This year, the House Democrats led the way to pass the first state tax cuts for middle-class Minnesotans in almost 2 decades. We also cut taxes on Social Security income and boosted the working family credit. Problems caused by lack of broadband problems caused by lack of good broadband in the state of Minnesota, especially for rural Minnesota, was addressed this year. I was proud to be the chief author of the rural broadband bill that we appropriated $40 million, $20 million for each of the next 2 years to work on grants for broadband all across the state of Minnesota for places that are unserved and underserved. So hopefully we won't have the people having to pull into the library parking lot at night just to get on Wi-Fi. I mean, and this will help ensure, I mean, what I'm amazed, I sit on the Ag Committee. I'm amazed at what the farmers are doing with the internet as far as fertilizing their fields and planting their fields. I mean, they got those tractors and fertilizers hooked up to the computer so they know exactly what spots need more or less fertilizer. It's an amazing thing. So rural broadband is important to all of the state, not just northern Minnesota, but all of rural Minnesota for those type things. And then we also came together to pass the toughest wage theft law in the nation. Making it clear to employers that they can't get by with stealing your time and wages anymore. It was Representative Tim Mahoney, that was his baby. He ushered that through as chair of the Jobs and Economic Development Committee, and he's a good old union pipe fitter, and he was going to make sure that happened. And I was proud to be a co-author on that bill and sit on the committee when we got it through. You know, without your support for Senator Bach and myself, along with electing Tim Walz, our governor, none of this would have been possible. It's you guys that do it for us, and you deserve all the credit for getting us here. We appreciate it. And maybe too early to talk about 2020, but you know, it's not. We have a lot to accomplish. All the goals we are setting out to as Democrats, there's no time to waste. It's time for a president who will stand up for the middle class and not the social class. A president who won't send our local global economy into a turmoil and put us on the brink of a third world war with a tweet. It's 2.5 years. I miss Barack Obama and his even-handed nature of how he ran things. Next March, we'll head to the polls to vote in the presidential primary. Based on the number of candidates currently in the race, it might be quite exciting. But what we need to do when that's done is we need to unite behind the person that comes out and say, oh, my person didn't win, so I'm going to sit on the sidelines and not do it. That's not how we beat Donald Trump. We need to get behind whoever comes out on this and whoever gets endorsed and say, this person is our candidate, and that's it. I don't want to hear what happened last year. Strategy from the other side heading into the 2020 election cycle is no secret. We see it every day, and it's a roadmap that they've used before. From Trump all the way down, Republicans are going to work as hard as they can to divide us, Minnesotans and Americans, based on what we look like, based on where we live, based upon how we make a living, based upon our family background. That's not the way we run the country. That's not the way we run our democracy. So it's up to all of us to reject this toxic, divisive politics of hate and fear that's tearing this country apart. Renew our efforts to fight for the values we believe in, not just as Democrats, but Americans. World-class schools, health care everyone can afford, jobs which will allow families to prosper in any economy that works for everybody. Natural resources that we cherish like forest trails, water and habitat. Communities that are safe and healthy to live in. Senator Smith and I'm excited to have her here. We got to tour quite a bit of International Falls today. Capped it off with a boat ride in Voyageurs National Park. It was a lot of fun. And we're working for a lot of the same things. Thank you all for coming out. Now it's my pleasure to introduce my senator, Tom Bach. And without Tom down there helping me and guiding me, my job would have been a whole lot tougher. And I feel like I'm kind of privileged because Senator Bach and I have on our calendar a day each week where we have set aside to get together for an hour or so. We don't always make it because other commitments happen and that sort of thing, but I don't know of any of my other colleagues that have that kind of working relationship with their senator. So Tom, I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the help. So Senator Tom Bach.
Well, thanks, Rob. And I can just tell you, as someone who's been around the legislature for a while, not meaning to date myself, but when January comes, it'll be my third decade in office. Not as long as my mentor and friend Irv Anderson served, but long enough to know when your colleagues are doing a really good job. And let me just tell you, you should all be very, very proud of Rob. He's your favorite son. You're very fortunate to have him. Most of you have him right here in your community, and you're very fortunate for that. So thanks for all the support that you've given him. He's got a huge district. It takes him probably, can you get to Grand Marais in 4 hours?
I get there in 4 hours, it's 6 from one end to the other.
He's got a lot of real estate. There are 8 states in our country that are smaller than his house district. So, and there's not a good way to get from here to there, as many of you know. Rob is right. The 2020 election for some of us is well underway. You're probably getting a little fatigue already with all of the candidates. I can just tell you, for me personally, because I'm the Democratic leader of the 32 members of the Senate who I bring welcome from, my job is to try and raise about $6 million for the next campaign and to make sure we have a candidate in every Senate race in the state, which is 67 seats. So, like Senator Smith, you'll learn pretty fast how big the state is when you have to drive around. I was down in Mankato earlier this week trying to raise some money down there and find some candidates in that deep rural area of the state. And the governor was down there with me helping, and I can just tell you, I'm just very pleased from what I see. His campaign was one that he kind of nicknamed One Minnesota. I can tell you, I probably know him better than any Democrat in the state Senate, and I can tell you, he means it. He really means it. He talks about, shouldn't matter what zip code you live in, you should be able to have access to good health care, access to good schools, reasonable property taxes, and good roads. And that's what he ran on, and I can tell you, I've gotten to know him over the last 8 months, and he really, really means that. And I told him I was going to be coming up here, and he asked me to send his regrets that he couldn't be here. I personally invited him. Joe asked me to personally invite him, but he's actually, after the event in Mankato, we headed off out east. Him and his wife Gwen took a week off. Their daughter Hope is going off to the University of Minnesota next week. So they're taking a little family vacation this week out east, just kind of looking around is how he described it to me. So for those of us that are elected officials, we get to a lot of airports, a lot of hotels, a lot of convention centers, but we don't really get to see much on the ground. So they're taking a week this week out east to do that. I was kind of looking around and I see quite a few young people here. Want to thank you for that, and just tell you the future is yours. Right? It's not mine. It's not most of us in this room. It's yours. And so as you network with your young friends, we all have to spend a little bit more time reminding each other that decisions that happen in government, they affect our lives. They affect our lives in big ways, in ways that I think we do some things so well we don't even think about it. I think most of us this morning probably left our homes and our family members didn't give any thought to the fact that we'd come home safely at the end of the day. Public safety is a function of government, and we do a pretty darn good job of it. And roads and schools and health care, and you think of all the things. And I just think all of us need to take a little bit of time, and I've got 8 grandkids right now myself, with our own kids and our own grandkids, and those of you that are younger here, with your friends, to remind them of how our lives are connected to government. And the decisions are going to get made there. And you're either going to be somebody that participates and tries to find good candidates, or maybe be in office someday yourself, or you're going to sit on the sidelines and decisions are going to happen without your input at all. And it's going to have an impact on your family. So those of you that are young people here, I just can't encourage you enough to get involved. I can tell you, I think if I could give you something to aim for, the best legislators are school board members. And I think it is one of the most admirable jobs in our state. The fact that people in the community will step up and run for school board and try to have an influence on the lives of young people as they're growing up. So, and I know there's probably some school board members here. So those of you that are doing that, thank you for doing that. Those of you that are young people, think about it. All of us that are paying taxes are making a huge investment in you, in your K-12 system, in our college system. And we really, really want you to be successful. So every election cycle, politicians stand in front of you and they say, geez, this is the most important election, right? Okay, it's the most important election. I got that out of the way, right? But elections are important, and a lot of them are important for different reasons. But this one in 2020 is important for a little bit different reason that only comes along every decade. And that's because the legislature that gets elected in 2020 is going to draw the redistricting maps that determine what Rob's district looks like, what mine looks like, what the others in the state look like, that then will be with us for the next 10 years. And many of you remember when Tom Saxog used to represent Coochin County and Tom Anzel's, and in the 2012 redistricting, you ended up with me. Rural districts generally are getting a little bigger. And in that case, in 2012, Senator Saxog, who had Coochin County, ended up paired with Bemidji. So 2 Senate seats became 1. And so this next legislature that's elected in 20 is going to make those kind of decisions again for the next decade, draw those maps. And it's pretty important. Oftentimes it's called partisan gerrymandering. The truth is it probably is the most partisan thing that legislatures do, draw legislative boundaries of districts. Currently today, a Senate district is about 79,000 people. We take the state's population, divide by 67, and then we get a number. And then we try to keep communities of interest together, so we try to keep school districts together, we try to keep cities together, we try to use natural boundaries like rivers, certainly the Canadian border and Lake Superior in my case, try to keep kind of like constituencies in the same Senate districts to the extent that we can. But it's very, very important work, and it's, I think, not a lot understood by the public, and I understand it. We're all managing very, very busy lives, but I can just tell you this next legislature's got some very, very important work to do. I can tell you in the case of Wisconsin, that is an all-Republican legislature. There is nothing that can happen to change that. I don't care what happens, Democrats cannot win control of the House or the Senate. And you'd like to think the redistricting gives you a set of maps that makes competitive districts so that the best candidate wins, right? That's one of the principles of redistricting. Let's make sure we draw districts that are competitive so the best candidate can win. Well, unfortunately, that oftentimes doesn't happen. And what happened in 2011, after the 2010 election, when the Republicans got control of the House, Senate, and Scott Walker was the governor, is they drew incredibly partisan maps that favored the Republicans. And now the Democrats have no hope. And that didn't happen in Minnesota because we had a Republican legislature, but Mark Dayton was the governor. So when they drew those very difficult maps for Democrats, the bill went to Mark Dayton and he vetoed it. And what happened last time was the courts then, if the legislature can't come to an agreement with the governor, the courts draw the maps. So the good news is nothing really bad can happen. Governor Walz is not going to sign a set of maps that's really unfair to one political party. So it could be that we'll default to the Supreme Court again to draw them. But sorry to get so far down in the weeds on that, but it's very, very important because there's a lot of important work to do at the legislature. You know, Rob's right, we came off of an okay session. It could have been better. There are things we didn't get anything done on, like emergency insulin. Isn't it frickin' shameful that people can die because they can't afford the insulin medication that they need? And the House passed it. We couldn't get the Senate Republicans to do that because they didn't want the pharmaceutical companies to pay anymore. So there's still quite a bit of additional work left to do. We've got to find a way to put more money into our higher educational system. college is getting way, way too expensive. And not that every kid should go to college. Let me just tell you, I've been a carpenter 43 years and it was a darn good living. But for kids that want to, it shouldn't cost as much as a new home. Put them in a position when once they get out of school, they can't figure out how to even get a mortgage from a bank. So, and it's really important to our business infrastructure that we make sure that we take our K-12 students and we educate them to their maximum potentials because our business community needs a talented workforce. And it's becoming more and more out of reach for more and more people. More's got to be done for K-12, specifically for rural schools. Our small schools are really struggling. You know, you take the state, and I've been trying for a number of years to find a way to tweak the K-12 formula because we pay per pupil. So in places like International Falls that might only have 8 or 10 kids in a upper division math class, maybe a calculus class, we pay for 8 or 10. But in a larger school that might have 20 kids in that class, they get twice the money to teach the same class. So there's something kind of fundamentally skewed against small schools, which are largely rural schools, and that still really badly needs to be addressed. More needs to happen on transportation, and I realize, we all want the roads fixed, and I think there's kind of general agreement we want them fixed, but we'd like to not have to pay for it if we can avoid paying for it at the pumps, and I get that. But we're going to have to invest more money in our transportation infrastructure. We've got highways and city streets all over the state falling apart. And those of you that are residents of International Falls, I just want to congratulate you for voting for on the referendum last November for a local option sales tax to fix your city streets up. And it's an area that the legislature has been very reluctant to invest money in. And so many cities, and International Falls this year, Two Harbors is also my district. They, by the same kind of number, 60-some%, the residents of Two Harbors decided, hey, the state's not going to send us money, so we're going to try to generate ourselves and fix our city streets. And you all know they're not going to fix themselves. So congratulations to all of you that supported that to make sure that we have the kind of transportation system that we not only want as citizens, but that our business community needs to move goods and services around. So, and then just finally, really want to help Senator Smith. It's a big state. Want to thank her for coming up here. She's got not a lot of time out of Washington, and for her to take a day to be here really is wonderful of you, Tina. Thank you. And I tell you, I have a lot of admiration for Tina, and I know her better than most probably because she served as Governor Dayton's chief of staff and as lieutenant governor when I was the Democratic leader of the Senate. So we spent a lot of time together over the years before she went off to the Senate, and she's doing an outstanding job. And I know you're all going to support her when her election comes up. So with that, my friend, Senator Tina Smith.
Well, you can see, okay, I'm not quite as tall as Tom Bach here, but that's better. Hello, everybody. How are you? I am so happy to be here with you at the, what is it, Joe? The 37th annual Coochin County DFL dinner. And I have to tell you, first of all, a big thank you to Joe for getting me here. You know, this is legendary across Minnesota, this fish fry. I've heard so much about it. And Joe sealed the deal for getting me here at Tommy Rukavina's funeral. Only Joe at a funeral would be saying, you know, Tina, it's so great to see you. We're so sorry about Tommy. Can you come to the fish fry next year? And as you said, as Joe said a minute ago, Tommy would have loved it, that we were all here together. And I'm not going to try to channel Tommy Rukavina, though I learned a lot from him. But God damn it, we're not going to take it anymore! I want to thank my good friend Tom Bach, who, you know, I have also learned a lot from. Tom is a master of the legislative process, and he knows the Minnesota Senate better than anybody I know. And he is exactly the kind of partner that we want our fantastic Governor Tim Walz to have as Senate Majority Leader in the Minnesota State Senate. So I know I'm going to be looking looking forward to working closely with him between now and November of 2020 to help make that possible. And I also want to just say a big thank you to Rob, who has been such a good friend. You know, Rob has been an amazing leader, especially on getting broadband to all parts of Minnesota, especially rural parts of Minnesota, because he understands that broadband is the basic infrastructure of the 21st century. If you don't have access to broadband, you don't have access to health care, you don't have access to education, you don't have access to the work that you need to do. It is so important. So I want to thank you, Rob, for that work and for hanging around with me today while I was visiting your district. It was really great. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to meet my campaign manager, Ryan Furlong, who's standing here in the back. And a couple of my official staff are here volunteering tonight. Sarah Silvernail is my state director. And Mark Kimball, who does communications for me in our office here in Minnesota. Thank you to the Slewgrass Family Band. You guys are amazing. You did a fantastic job. And I want to do a special thank you to Marguerite and your longtime companion, Wayne, who did an amazing job of holding the microphone for you. Everybody told me that I wouldn't believe it when I heard your voice, and they were right. You're amazing, amazing. I don't know, it was amazing. And your vibrato was incredible, and I read something that Marguerite said, which is that basically, no smoking and no yelling so that your singing voice can last. Yeah, and harmonica too. Now, I asked Marguerite. Wayne says, I can't believe she would yell at you, and only if you deserved it. Now, some of you probably know that Marguerite is turning 100 in October. And I asked her what she thought about us all singing her happy birthday, and she said she thought that would be very nice. So will you join me in singing happy birthday to Marguerite? Look, she's acting like she's a tad embarrassed, but I think she's happy. Okay, here we go. Now, the most important thing is we don't start too low and we don't go too fast. So don't go too slow. So here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Marguerite. Happy birthday to you. Oh, you're welcome. I won't forget that. That's. Well, so I have spent this week in northwestern Minnesota and International Falls. I started out in East Grand Forks, went to Crookston, went to Viking, Minnesota, went to Halleck. Look, we have a Viking fan over here. We went to Far North Spirits in Halleck, and we went to Roseau, and yesterday we spent the day on the Northwest Angle, talking to the Minnesotans that have to go through Canada to go to school. These kids in Northwest Angle, it's an hour-and-a-half bus ride each way to get to school in Warroad. We did some fishing in Lake of the Woods, and I'm proud to say I caught 3 walleyes and ate them for dinner. They were every bit as good as the amazing food that we had here tonight. And then we stopped in Warroad and talked to the publishers of the new newspaper in Warroad, because many of you probably know that the Warroad Pioneer went out of business after over 100 years in business. And small towns that don't have a newspaper, it is like we've lost the glue that holds us together, whether it's the information about high school graduations or obituaries, or as the reporter said to me, or the crime reports. It's the glue that holds us together, and I had a chance to meet with this fantastic young couple in Warroad that are starting up a new weekly newspaper, the Warroad Advocate, they moved back to that community because they love it so much. And I have to tell you that is what fills me with optimism and just like the get up and go that you need to go to Washington, D.C. every damn week. I see that kind of energy and innovation and inspiration in small towns and rural areas every place in this state, and it fills me with joy. And so then to come and finish up this week here at International Falls and have a chance to see what's happening on Main Street, to go to the hospital at International Falls and see how hard people are working to make sure that this community has the health care that everybody needs, especially maternity care, so that this can continue to be a place where young people and old people and all the people in between want to be and want to live and can live. That is the purpose that gets me up every single day. Now, I have to tell you, this is a crazy time. You watch the cable news every day and you'd think that this country, you'd think that this country is going to hell in a handbasket. And one of the reasons that I love to get out of Washington and to come and visit towns all over Minnesota is because I can see that that is not the case. And what I see when I visit small towns and rural areas and suburban communities and the big cities too, is I see Minnesotans who they don't wake up every morning going, I'm a Democrat and I'm taking my kids to school, or I'm a Republican and I'm mad as hell about immigration, or the latest thing that, whatever it is that the president said. People are trying to figure out how to make their lives work. And if those of us in Washington, D.C. and in St. Paul keep that in our minds, keep that in our hearts, we're going to do a hell of a lot better job than if all we think about is how we can win the next fight, how we can score the next point. That is what our democracy is supposed to be about. I'll tell you, this afternoon we had lunch at Sammy's Pizza, and as we were leaving, I was holding the door open for everybody that was walking out, and after our crew walked out, there were some more people that were walking out, including this guy who didn't know me and I didn't know him, and I held the door open for him, and he was like, well, that's really nice. I said, well, let me introduce myself. I'm your United States Senator. And he looked a little nonplussed. I'm pretty sure he wasn't a Democrat. But, I'm like, I'm your United States Senator. I'd hold the door open for any one of you any single day. That is my job. About 20 minutes or half an hour later, we're walking down the street, and this man, his name is Jeff, comes tearing up to me. And he looks, as my mother would say, he looks like he had a bee in his bonnet. And he said, Senator Smith, I have he was excited. He said, having a chance, I just want to take a minute to talk to you. He said, I want you to understand something. He said, I work in the timber business. My family has worked in timber. My father, my father's father. This is how I support my family. This is how I put my kids through college. This is how I am still supporting my family. And this is what this is what makes my life work. He says, and I sometimes feel like you people in Washington, D.C., you don't get that. And all I see on television is how everybody's going to get something free. And guys like me, we're fed up with that. Now, I'm pretty sure Jeff is not a Democrat. But here's the thing. I listened to him because that is my job. And I didn't agree with him with what he was saying, and I helped to set him straight when he said that illegal immigrants are coming to this country and getting all sorts of free stuff. And I said, that's actually not what's happening. Illegal immigrant, and he said, my family was an immigrant family. I understand that. But at the end of that conversation, as we actually put aside the heat and we had an actual conversation, he hugged me at the end. Now, the reason I tell you this is because I believe that what Jeff is trying to figure out and what most people in this state and this country are trying to figure out is whose side are us politicians really on? Are we on our side? Are we on the side of the people with all the money and all the power? Or are we on the side of people like Jeff and people like the people in this room, regardless of what party they're in? And I am here to tell you that I am on your side, and not everybody is in this government right now. Not everybody is. Whose side the Republicans on when they passed a tax bill that gave over 80% of the business to the richest and the biggest corporations in this country. They're not on our side. Whose side are they on when they are actively working to repeal the very protections that make sure that none of you are discriminated against when it comes to health care because you have a pre-existing condition, like diabetes or high blood pressure or being a woman? That's what this is about. Whose side are we on when we talk about, Senator Bach talked about the issue around insulin and affording insulin. I've talked to a young man from the Iron Range named Travis Paulson. Travis Paulson has diabetes, and he goes to Canada to buy the insulin that he needs to keep himself alive, and he pays $27 a vial. If he were to go to his pharmacy here in the United States of America, the price of that insulin would be $350. And the companies, the 3 companies that are manufacturing this insulin, they made $14 billion in after-tax profit in 2018. Now, whose side are they on? They are not on our side. What we need in Washington is more people who are willing to stand up to that, willing to say, hell no, that is not the way it's supposed to work. We are not going to have it work that way. And that is what this next election is going to be all about. That's what it's about. Now, I have the unlikely situation of basically running a 3-year campaign with 2 elections. November of 2018 and November of 2020. And I want you to know that I am so grateful to serve as your United States Senator, and I am hell-bent to win in 2020. I am hell-bent. And here's the reason why. If we have a Democratic majority in the United States Senate, then Mitch McConnell is not going to be able to turn the United States Senate. Mitch McConnell has turned the United States Senate into the place where good ideas go to die. Election reform that we need so desperately, passed over by the United States House, has died in the United States Senate. Protecting people with pre-existing conditions, passed in the United States House of Representatives, has died on the Senate floor. Making sure that women have access to reproductive health care. Can we get a vote to say that that should be the law of the land? No, not in Mitch McConnell's United States Senate. That is why I want to win this election and make sure that the United States Senate can be on our side come 2021. United States Senate. It is about winning this presidential race, and Tom understands this. Rob understands this. We got to understand that Donald Trump has probably about a 50-50 chance of winning in 2018. Now, I don't say that to bring you down. I say that to you to fire you up. Because if everybody in this room, and rooms just like this all over our state, if we use our voices, if we raise up our voices, we will win. Because our voices are more powerful than the people who have all the money and all the power right now, but only if we use them. We use our voices for justice, for health care as a fundamental human right, for common sense reforms to our gun rules, for the basic idea that people ought to have the facility, the capacity to work with dignity, work one job to take care of their family and to have a secure retirement. That is what we need to lift our voices up for. And if we do, we will win. We will win the United States Senate. I will win. Tom Bach will become the next Senate Majority Leader. Rob Eklund will be in the majority of the Minnesota House, and we will be able to get good things done for Minnesotans. So will you join me? Will you lift up your voices to make sure that we win in 2020? Will you do that? We'll do it together? Well, I will be with you every single step of the way. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.